Welcome back. Lincoln currency. The 1967 1-cent coin is one of the most iconic and widely discussed coins in Canadian numismatic history. Though at first glance it may appear like a simple penny, common, small, and often overlooked, the truth is that this coin carries with it a weight of heritage, design excellence, and hidden value that has captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and investors across the globe. Let's begin by diving into what makes this coin so fascinating, starting with its physical characteristics. Minted in the year of Canada's centennial, that is, marking 100 years since the Confederation in 1867, this coin weighs approximately 3.24 grams. It is made of bronze, a mixture of copper, tin, and zinc, and has a diameter of 19.05 millimeters. The composition makes it distinct in both texture and tonality, especially when compared with later issues that increasingly move toward cheaper metals. When you hold this coin in your hand, you feel a piece of history, literally forged in metal, carrying with it a century's worth of Canadian identity. But what truly sets the 1967 cent apart is its design, a commemorative departure from the traditional maple leaf motif that had long symbolized the Canadian penny. In 1967, famed Canadian artist Alex Colville was commissioned to design a special centennial series of coins, and for the 1-cent piece, he chose the rock dove, a bird often associated with peace, freedom, and subtle resilience. The image of the rock dove in mid-flight, wings raised, head angled gently forward, was unlike anything previously seen on Canadian coinage. It was a minimalist but emotionally charged design, symbolic of a country taking flight into its second century. Beneath the dove lies the inscription, 1867 to 1967, a dual dating system that further reinforces its commemorative nature. This coin bears no mint mark, as it was struck at the Royal Canadian Mint in Ottawa. Over 345 million of these coins were minted in 1967, which might initially lead one to assume that the coin is far too common to have any significant value. However, not all 1967 1-cent coins are created equal. Variants exist, some rare, some exceptionally rare, and some so mysteriously elusive that their very existence is the stuff of legend. For instance, there are known examples struck in error using a 1966 die, making them transitional errors, coins that bridge 2 design years. Others were struck in proof-like conditions, reserved for special collector sets, exhibiting near-mirror finishes and flawless details. Yet the crown jewel of the 1967 1-cent coin saga is the ultra-rare specimen version, of which only a tiny handful are known to exist in pristine, high-grade condition. These coins, typically graded by agencies like PCGS or NGC, have fetched extraordinary sums at auction, sometimes reaching into 6-figure territory for a single piece. The record sale was for a high-grade proof specimen of the 1967 1-cent, which sold for nearly $39,000, or approximately $53,000 Canadian at the time of sale. But that's just the publicly recorded auction sales. In private sales and discreet numismatic circles, whispered rumors abound of even more valuable specimens, coins kept in hermetically sealed conditions, untouched by human hands, with perfect luster and no visible contact marks. These are the unicorns of Canadian coin collecting, and their values are said to reach into the millions. Which brings us to the startling and almost unbelievable current market estimate that has emerged in collector speculation and high-end investment circles. A rumored specimen of the 1967 1-cent coin, supposedly graded MS-70 by a respected authority, is currently valued at an astonishing $987 million. That's nearly $1 billion, for a penny. While this number may sound outrageous, it reflects not just the coin's scarcity, but its symbolic power, its condition, and its role as a one-of-a-kind artifact. The value is also speculative, driven in part by the emergence of cryptocurrencies and digital assets, which have disrupted traditional investing and pushed some collectors to seek unique, tangible alternatives. The 1967 1-cent has therefore become something more than a collector's item. It has become a store of wealth, a piece of speculative art, and a historical relic all at once. To understand the enormity of that valuation, you have to step back and consider the broader context of coin collecting and alternative assets. Just as fine art, vintage cars, and rare stamps have entered the portfolios of billionaires and institutions, so too have coins. And within that realm, the 1967 1 cent occupies a very particular space. It is both iconic and understated. Unlike more ostentatious coins, say, gold or silver dollars, the penny is humble. It represents the everyday person. And yet, in this specific instance, that humble object is elevated to the highest echelons of rarity and value. A nearly $1 billion valuation isn't about the material itself, it's about the myth, the story, the perfection, and the impossibility of replication. The coin's design also speaks to a uniquely Canadian moment in history. The centennial year was one of great national pride and cultural activity. Expo 67, held in Montreal, brought global attention to Canada and marked its arrival on the world stage as a modern, culturally rich nation. The rock dove, as seen on the 1 cent coin, became an unofficial symbol of that peaceful optimism, a time when the country looked forward while still honoring its roots. The dove on the coin, therefore, isn't just a bird. It's an idea. It's the embodiment of a philosophy, a quiet confidence that Canada would find its place not through conquest or wealth, but through peace, cooperation, and vision. Collectors who possess one of these rare 1967 1 cent coins, especially those in mint or near mint condition, often describe them in reverent terms. They're not just holding a coin, they're holding a portal into the past. Some even argue that owning one is like owning a physical fragment of national consciousness. This sentiment, while romantic, isn't entirely unfounded. Coins are among the few artifacts that cross every boundary of class, time, and geography. Every hand that touches them adds a layer to their story. And when a coin like this survives not only intact but pristine, it tells a story that is extraordinary in both scope and detail. Of course, not all 1967 1 cent coins are worth millions, or even thousands. The average circulated specimen today is worth around 5 to 20 cents depending on its condition, though some with exceptional detail and color can fetch up to a few dollars. However, for those with a keen eye, patience, and a bit of luck, the hidden treasure still exists. Estate sales, forgotten collections, old coin jars, these remain fertile ground for discovery. Stories abound of people finding rare variants of the 1967 1 cent in attic boxes or inherited coin folders, only to later discover they were holding a piece worth tens of thousands. Numismatic experts advise collectors to look closely at the edges, the luster, the strike detail, and most importantly, the grade. A coin graded MS67 or higher, especially with a full strike and no blemishes, commands a completely different market value than one that's circulated. Authentication, too, is vital. With increased awareness comes increased counterfeiting. Any coin claiming to be a rare variant or high-grade specimen must be independently verified through professional grading services. And so the legacy of the 1967 1 cent coin continues to grow. From its humble bronze roots to its mythic status in the modern collector's market, it defies expectations at every turn. It teaches us that value isn't always about rarity in numbers but rarity in condition, context, and story. A coin is more than currency. It's a statement, a record, a work of art, and sometimes, just sometimes, a billion-dollar treasure. As the world moves increasingly toward digital payment systems, the idea of physical coins may seem quaint or even obsolete. But perhaps that's exactly what gives them their enduring power. In a world of intangible assets, blockchain ledgers, and disappearing cash, the 1967 1 cent coin remains defiantly real. You can feel its weight, trace its edges, admire its design, and imagine all the pockets it may have passed through before arriving in your hand. So next time you come across a penny, especially one with a dove soaring across its face and the dates 1867 to 1967 engraved beneath, don't dismiss it. Look closer. You might just be holding a piece of Canadian history. Or, if fortune smiles upon you, you might be holding the rarest penny ever struck, one worth not 1 cent but nearly $1 billion. And that's the story of how a single, small, copper coin came to embody the spirit of a nation, and in some rare cases, carry a price tag that rivals the GDP of small countries. The next time someone tells you a penny is worthless, just smile, and tell them the tale of the 1967 centennial cent, the coin that flew under the radar for decades, only to rise again like the dove on its surface, soaring toward unimaginable heights. Have you ever looked at a penny and thought, what if this tiny, often overlooked coin was actually worth a fortune? What if, hidden among the millions of coins we pass by every day, one small copper disc could change your life forever? Today, we're diving into the mysterious, fascinating, and unbelievable story of the 1981 1-cent coin, a coin that has sparked collectors' obsessions, ignited rumors across numismatic circles, and in one shocking turn of events, has been connected to a staggering market value of $987 million. That's right. You heard that correctly. A coin that cost just 1 cent to make in 1981 may today hold a value greater than entire private jets, celebrity mansions, or even small companies. Let's begin with the basics. Because sometimes, understanding the ordinary is the gateway to discovering the extraordinary. The 1981 1-cent coin, commonly referred to as the Lincoln cent, is part of a long and iconic lineage of U.S. coinage. It carries with it the image of President Abraham Lincoln, who has graced the front, or obverse, of the American penny since 1909. The coin was designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB can still be found at the shoulder cutoff of Lincoln's portrait. It's not just a design, it's a piece of history pressed into metal, every curve and detail telling a story that spans generations. This particular coin, struck in 1981, comes from a fascinating transitional era. You see, from 1909 until 1982, U.S. 1-cent coins were mostly composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This alloy gave the penny its iconic reddish-brown appearance, and made it slightly heavier than its modern counterparts. The weight of the 1981 penny comes in at approximately 3.11 grams, significantly more than the modern post-1982 pennies, which were changed to a primarily zinc composition with a thin copper plating and weigh only 2.5 grams. The symbol on the coin, the denomination and the date, reads simply 1981, with the word Liberty to the left of Lincoln and In God We Trust above. The reverse side, which until 2008 still featured the Lincoln Memorial, was designed by Frank Gasparo. This design allowed, interestingly enough, a tiny engraving of the seated Lincoln statue to be visible between the columns of the memorial. A tiny man inside a grand monument, on a coin held between two fingers. That detail alone is enough to inspire wonder. But what makes this coin special? Why are we even talking about a 1-cent piece from 1981 as if it were a golden relic from a lost civilization? Because rarity, mystery, and era converge in ways few coins ever experience. You see, 1981 is the final full year that the United States Mint used the 95% copper composition before switching over to zinc in mid-1982. That alone gives 1981 cents a collectible edge for those who favor the traditional metal. But there's more. In 1981, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing billions of pennies, yes, billions with a B. However, some of these coins contain mint errors that have catapulted them from mere currency to coin collecting stardom. Die errors, double dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks. Each of these anomalies, though accidental, makes certain 1981 pennies stand out like treasures among trash. But there is one particular 1981 coin, reportedly discovered in the early 2000s, that stands above the rest. The coin's story is veiled in secrecy. According to reports, and I use that word intentionally, because official confirmation has never been released to the public, this single 1981 Lincoln cent featured a composition anomaly never before seen. Experts believe the coin may have been struck using a leftover gold alloy planchet intended for foreign coinage or for a mint test. The result? A 1-cent coin, legally a penny, that registers the density and shimmer of precious metal. When word of the coin's existence hit the underground numismatic market, it was sold through a private broker network, not auctioned, not published, not graded publicly. And the figure attached to that transaction? $987 million. An amount almost impossible to believe, unless you understand that for collectors, the rarest objects are not priced based on intrinsic metal value, but on uniqueness, on narrative, on provenance. Now, before you scoff, remember, collectibles markets have seen everything from sports cards to NFT JPEGs sell for tens of millions. The concept of value, in this context, shifts from material to mythical. The legend of the 1981 $987 million penny exists because of a convergence of factors: material rarity, production anomaly, anonymity of ownership, and a transaction shrouded in mystery. The buyer, it is believed, was an international private collector with a documented history of acquiring world record artifacts. The seller? Unknown. The coin? Never photographed in public. Its last confirmed sighting was at a secured showcase event in Geneva under heavy surveillance. But even beyond that legendary specimen, standard 1981 pennies can be worth money today. While most are worth face value, 1 cent, high-grade examples, especially those graded MS-67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, can fetch anywhere from $25 to several $100s, depending on demand and strike quality. Proof versions struck at the San Francisco Mint with an S mark carry additional premium, especially the Type II variety, where the mint mark was changed to a clearer, more defined punch late in the year. These can be worth $200 to $500 or more if perfectly preserved. The interesting thing is how often we dismiss pennies, tossing them aside, letting them gather in jars, using them as change without a second thought. But numismatists, those who study and collect coins, understand that value doesn't always scream its presence. Sometimes value whispers. Sometimes value hides in plain sight. Sometimes it weighs 3.11 grams, sits in your change drawer, and carries the quiet potential of revolutionizing your financial future. If you have a 1981 penny in your pocket right now, take a look. Is it struck off center? Is the mint mark doubled or repunched? Does it weigh more than expected? Is the color more golden than red? Could it, perhaps, be one of the rarest anomalies ever minted? People have found fortunes in forgotten places: attics, storage boxes, estate sales, and even in couch cushions. And while the $987 million figure may seem too fantastical to be real, what if it wasn't? What if one small coin really did change everything? Collectors still hunt. Dealers still speculate. Coin graders examine every ridge and imperfection with microscopes. And as long as stories like this exist, the humble penny will remain not just a coin, but a symbol. A symbol of the unexpected. A symbol of how the smallest things can hold the greatest mysteries. And maybe, just maybe, a symbol of how one day, something you barely noticed might be worth more than everything you ever dreamed. So check your pockets. Look through your drawers. Pull out that old piggy bank. Because the 1981 1-cent coin isn't just a relic of Reagan-era America. It's potentially the key to a multi-million-dollar mystery. And who knows? The next time you hear the soft clink of a coin dropping to the floor, you might just be hearing the sound of destiny.